digitaljamsessions.com.
Hello and welcome to this Digital Jam special. Today we are joined once again by Oscar Clark from Unity, amongst other things. But we also have with us Alex, Darby and Noel. Now I'm going to let you guys explain exactly where you're from in just 1 second, but I am going to give context because today we are doing a special edition Digital Jam session in advance of I'm going to call it the mega panel because that's what you've been calling it, Oscar, which will be happening not at Comic-Con as first advertised in a previous session, but actually at Insomnia on the 9th and 10th of December in Birmingham. Oscar, would you like to give us some context and explain, first of all, who you are, and then give us the context about the mega panel? I feel like that needs a special recording. Mega panel.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'm Oscar Clark. I'm an indie developer with a company called Rocket Lolly Games, making a game based on the Rocky Horror Show. But I'm probably better known as my other job, which is as an evangelist at Unity. So a while ago, Tanya, Alex, and Des and myself were basically having a joke about how we could carry on talking forever. And somebody then turned that into a challenge to do a 24-hour live stream. We've been thinking about this for a while, and we talked to the team at Multiplay, and they've arranged to give us a stage to make this crazy, insane idea come to life. And what's even more interesting is we've got about 20, 30 people who've also said they want to take part. Some amazing figures from the industry, people like Mike Hines from Amazon, Kate Edwards from the IGDA, people like Dave Ranyard, who was former head of London studio and is now a specialist in VR, Kadri Ugun from Game Founders, who has been setting up accelerators for game developers for a long time. But really cool are two particular people, so like Stuart Rogers from VentureBeat, and also Daz Black, a kind of million subscriber YouTuber that we know. So we've got an incredible bunch of people. There's some great support from Staffordshire University who are going to give us a whole bunch of volunteers to help. But the idea is that we want to talk about games and culture and how the games industry interrelates with players. So that's what we're trying to do. It's all being done to raise money for charity, for the charity Special Effect, who help physically disabled people play games, which has a huge benefit in terms of confidence and sense of autonomy and so on and so forth.
Okay.
But enough of me talking.
So, and as well, not that I want to raise anybody's hopes here who's listening to this thinking, I'm going to go listen to this mega panel and this might happen, but I am going to insinuate the possibility of having a drunken live connection with the team at Yuki from their Christmas drinks party. Just saying, it's a possibility.
That would be so cool, wouldn't it? So in case anyone's listening doesn't know who Yuki is, that's the UK Interactive Entertainment trade body. It's one of the sort of main supporting groups that helps make sure that we in the games industry have proper representation and basically helps a lot of people be successful, including students who want to get into the industry.
Indeed. And they decided they were going to have their Christmas drinks at the same time as we were doing our mega panel. And so we thought, why, if we can't have them there in person, we will have them there via a live connection. We just can't guarantee they'll be sober. So, Alex, why don't you introduce yourself and explain a little bit more about who you are, what you do?
Okay, so my name is Alex Darby, obviously. Today's literally the 20th anniversary of the first day that I started my job working in the video game industry.
Woohoo!
I'm old. I was just thinking about it earlier, and I've worked out that I've been working in the industry for longer than it had existed before I joined it, if you see what I mean.
Ouch.
Sort of, anyway. I mean, I guess there was like the Atari 2600, but even then it's pretty close.
Why are you trying to make yourself feel old? Why are you doing this to yourself, Alex?
I don't mind. I already feel old. I get letters from my GP asking me to go for tests and stuff because I'm like, oh my God, I'm not that old. Anyway, I'm not that old. I'm only 41. So what do? I make video games, obviously. I'm an indie developer. I'm working on my own IP, but that sort of has to take a back seat most of the time to contract work that I do to actually pay my bills. So at the moment, I'm working on a game called Tokyo 42, which is actually really awesome. I won't try and plug it. And so I basically got involved with this because I was talking to Oscar at Develop, and I overheard somebody saying,
and he gave you no choice, basically.
No, this is the best idea ever, Oscar. We have to do it because I just think it's like, first of all, we get to talk for a whole day, which clearly you can tell I'm not going to have any trouble doing. But better than that, we like Oscar said, we're raising money for special effects, and we're like going to talk about really interesting things with really interesting people. I'm like so excited at the moment. I can't even explain how excited I am about it.
Okay.
But there you go. That's me, I think.
You've been very patient in the background there. Why don't you tell us all about what you do and all of that headhunting you do?
Oh, thank you, Tanya. So my name's Noel.
been working in the games industry for 8 years now, heavily based on the recruitment, both externally and internally. Been a special effect ambassador for quite a while. Just did the Twin Town Challenge 2016, where we managed to raise £300,000, which was fantastic. Also volunteer for the IGDA on conferences and such like. And with regards to what I do and where I fit in, I'm going to be seen at various conferences around the world and offer advice with regards to recruitment or talent acquisition, as they sometimes call it nowadays. And we've got the reputation as being the go-to resourcer for those difficult to find people. Always up for a challenge, and going to be doing the special effect monster race later next year. So I think that's March time, which I'm a little bit dubious about, but special effect is a very, very worthwhile cause.
But the monster one is horrible.
Yeah.
What is the monster race? What is this? Come on, explain to me.
A heap of obstacles. You get absolutely filthy. Last year they had snow and ice, and
isn't it enough that they make you run, that they have to also make you like leap through obstacles and things as well?
Swim and go under. And
why? Just why?
Soaking wet and yeah. So
make it more like it's a knockout, then it'd be fun.
Exactly.
Okay.
So,
I think it is like it's knockout, but for fit people.
Yeah,
in which case it's never happening. Never happening.
Yes.
We work in the games industry. Come on, let's be real. None of us are as fit as we should be.
Exactly right. New Year's resolution is the same every year, isn't it?
Right. So here's the thing. We've talked about the podcast and what we're going to be doing at Insomnia, but what we haven't talked about yet properly is special effect and what it actually is and does and why it's so very, very important. So I'm going to start with you, Oscar, because you are the brainchild behind all of this. Tell us, from your perspective, what you think is the single most important thing about special effect.
I think child mind rather than brainchild. But yeah, the thing about special effect that I find really fascinating is just the impact it can have on people's lives. So what they do is they basically take control devices that allow people who've got other sort of physical limitations and therefore couldn't otherwise play games. So, for example, it might be to change the way that a kind of Xbox controller works or a PlayStation controller works. It might be to do mapping, eye tracking tools, so that people who can't even use their hands can actually still get interaction and play. It's working with software developers to make sure that they can have the hooks plugged in, which enable mapping of various controls to the game. There's a whole bunch of physical and software and just personal ergonomic challenges to help individual people be catered for based on their very, very different needs. And when you actually just see somebody, whether it's a kid who gets to play, a game for the first time, or an adult who's maybe had an accident or had an injury in combat or something, and you see the fact that they can now engage, they can now, actually immerse themselves in this hobby that also unlocks the opportunity to talk to people and share, have common experiences, and it just helps bring friends and families back together again. It seems trivial when you think of it as just games, but it really isn't. And the deep psychological benefits of the sense of autonomy, the sense of self-determination that comes from play really can't be underestimated.
Okay.
One of the biggest effects is the levelling of the playing field. So someone with a disability can suddenly play around with their friends of a similar age group, and they're one of the team, and they're competing on the same level, and in some cases beating their friends at FIFA or something like that, which they weren't able to do previously. And that kind of thing really does have a magical effect on the family.
Okay. Absolutely. Alex, what's your thoughts on that?
I just think special effect, I'm just going to echo everybody. That's the problem with going third, is that you have to sort of echo everybody else's a little bit. But I mean, essentially, I think special effects are incredible. And the transformative effect of being able to go, I think, as a person who is able-bodied, I get a transformative effect when I go and play in game worlds anyway, because that's one of the reasons I do it, is you can do stuff you could never do in real life, and that sort of escapism, I think it's incredibly sad that it isn't or hasn't been available to everybody, and I think it's incredibly important that we are doing our best to make it available to everybody. And so that's really why I got involved.
Okay.
With this,
I think
especially that's why I think they're amazing.
I think it goes a little bit further as well, because if you think about it, every other form of entertainment has a sort of passive element to it. If you look at film or books or music, we are recipients of that media. Games is the only medium where we do, and the act of doing is a key part of what helps us feel fulfilled as individuals. And so, like I say, it's not whether everybody or not, we can have a common shared experience of doing where your ability, physically or not, is irrelevant, where the actual experience of the game and the act of playing the game is what becomes the common currency.
Okay. So here's the thing I want to know from each of you. Is we've talked about this kind of special effect as such, no pun intended, when you're giving somebody who has limitations the ability to be able to truly interact with the game. What I want to know from each of you is what is the game, or what is that moment in gaming for you that really kind of is the one that you remember as being transformative or changing, or I don't want to say life-changing necessarily, but what has been that big moment when you're playing a game, you're just like, okay, I get it now. My life is just completely changed, or my perspective is completely changed because I played this game. What would be that game? I'm curious to hear from you on this one, Alex.
I've got two, really. One is from when I was about 5, and I was on holiday, going on holiday to Scotland with my family, and there was like a Pac-Man arcade machine, and they were. This is when they came out, pretty much. And my dad's best friend, who was going on holiday with us, it's like one of those family coupley things, right? He was playing it, and my dad was moaning at him for playing it, and I was just watching it, and it was blowing my mind, like literally blowing it. And like I can still remember, I'm looking up at a Pac-Man screen from below and seeing it, this massive thing in perspective, and that really was the thing for me. It's like I was like, wow, that looks like the coolest thing ever. And then so that's what sort of made me want to play games in the first place, and sort of want, because you can see that someone's so, but the game that like fundamentally, like for me, and it's a bit of a cliche one maybe, it's like Mario 64. Like I think that is just possibly the most, like, sort of where it stood in history, at least. Like it suddenly just opened up, games had been fine and there was nothing wrong with any of the games. There were loads of amazing games before that, but when Mario 64 came along, it suddenly allowed a whole set of interactions that you just physically couldn't have done without the control of the N64, and the way that they'd made it was just so joyful to run about and bounce around and like all of that stuff. Like I just spent, I would just sit there running about and doing somersaults and stuff for like hours at a time. And that is ridiculous, but I did it, and for me that was an incredible experience because enabling, really, I guess.
Okay, so Oscar, I know that yours is going to be an absolute gem. Tell me, what is your life-changing moment in gaming? Come on.
You want me to pick one? That's the trouble. I mean, there is a few, and I think it's worth doing 3. And
dear. Okay.
I'll tell you why. Thing 1 was Dungeons and Dragons in 1979.
Do you know what? I knew you was going to say Dungeons and Dragons. I knew it was going to be in there somewhere.
I can't talk about games without having some reference to kind of physical tabletop games. And the pivotal moment was when my uncle got us playing at Christmas Dungeons and Dragons for the first time, and I absolutely, I knew I had to do games at that point. But that led on to a whole bunch of things about board games and designing board games and all that kind of stuff, and writing role-playing games, which I did a game called West Point Extraplanetary Academy, which sold 223 copies. How exciting! The next pivotal game is probably Battlezone.
Okay.
So in the arcades, the first wireframe tank Battlezone absolutely changed everything for me. So that's why whilst I totally respect Mario and all this kind of stuff, it doesn't do it for me. I wanted to feel that I was in the world. And Battlezone was the first game that I experienced that really showed me I could be in the world. But the last of the list of games, which I think still is my favourite game of all time, and it's more modern, and it shows to the extent, again, being inside the world, and that's Skyrim.
Okay.
There's a point where you're wandering around Skyrim, picking flowers, and you've forgotten about the rest of the game. And I think that really epitomises this whole idea of escape and the joy that comes from being completely and utterly immersed in the world.
Okay. Alex, I'm going to give you the opportunity. Did you have any two others that you want to name in response to Oscar's slapdown?
I do totally right, because what reminded me of it was Oscar talking about, my brain's gone, the tank game, that Atari tank game that he was talking about. Yeah, Battlezone. When I was about 10, my best friend's mum was one of those people who like vicariously lived through her kids, and she came from like a relatively impoverished background. She'd never been able to go ice skating, and to her that was like the epitome of being able to do what you want with your life. So she used to make my friend go ice skating every Tuesday after school. And so I was like, what, do you want to play? And he'd be like, no, I'm going ice skating. I was like, ugh. So every Tuesday that would happen, and eventually I was like, can I come? So I started going, and my mum used to give me £1 to buy chips, right? And what I used to do was I used to go straight to the arcade centre in the ice rink, just put it in the pound into 10p's machine, and then put all of those 10p's into the Star Wars arcade game, like, you know, the really old school one with the wireframe graphics. That literally that probably blew my mind more than Mario at the time, possibly, you know, because it was a thing that when you got a console, it's in your house, you can play it whenever you want. Those old arcade games were like, it was like going to Alton Towers or something really bonkers and magical. Like, you could only do it at the time you were allowed to do it. And so your whole week would build up to getting that £1 and turning it into 10p's and then going and playing, you know, and every week you'd get a little bit better. Like, that game was, amazing.
I actually, every time I go to San Francisco, there's a museum of kind of machinima type things. So like, you know, like arcade machines and that kind of stuff. And they have a Star Wars arcade game in there. And I have to go and play it. It's like one of my kind of things I always have to do.
There's not enough arcade machines in the world anymore.
It's not wrong.
But no, what about you? You choose up to 3 given Oscar's benchmark.
Oh, well, I don't think I could even compete with that. I'd have to go for about 10 compared to Oscar's. So, yeah, you put me on the hop, so I've been thinking about it and trying to furiously scribble notes. But, I mean, quoting from Alex, going back to sort of the arcade games and things, my first experience was Manic Miner on an arcade on holiday, and then that was how we got the Spectrum 48K, and then that was the same year that the next door neighbours got a Commodore, and then the Ataris and the Amigas came out. So I probably prefer the inclusive games, so the team ones, so Mario Kart, and then on the Amiga, we probably all got together with Dino Blaster, and that was
Dino Blaster! I remember that.
We went through probably hundreds of joysticks trying to do that. But that was probably my defining moment of video games, how it could bring a group of 8 or 10 lads together after football or rugby or cricket. You know, it's a calming effect, but very competitive. And that's what I love about video games. And leading back onto the special effect, that's the inclusivity that I love, to be able to see special effect giving that back to people.
Well, I have to say, I'm going to show my age here and say that I remember when I had my Commodore 64, and the thing that really blew my mind, my teeny tiny little mind back then, was the fact that whilst you was loading, you know when you put the cassette tape in, you hit play and let it do its little thing for like forever, was that you could actually play like Space Invaders in between.
Yep.
That blew my tiny little brain at the time.
Yeah, that was funny.
But,
actually, talk about Commodore 64 reminds me of a game that no one ever seems to remember, called Suicide Express. I always remember it because it was like a train. You had to choose which track you put the train on. Right. But it had like Jean-Michel Jarre's Oxygen playing in the background.
I don't remember that one specifically, no.
Yeah, you got me going down memory lane there.
I was a proper Commodore 64, you know, like, that was my thing. I didn't bother with Ataris or anything like that. I was like, no, I'm sticking to my guns. I got the 64, that's what I'm sticking with. But, you know, the other game that sticks in my mind as well is, this is going to sound really weird, the Top Gun game. And I say this because no one's talking about joysticks. I'm just thinking about the amount of times that I played that bloody game. And when you start out in the beginning, they do the whole little cut sequence from the movie. And obviously this was way back when, so it's still really blocky and not exactly, you know, slick looking. But you just had that music playing, leading you in as your aircraft was getting kind of wheeled out, ready to take off. It was just like, yes.
There's so many of those things that you could go back to. I mean, how many games, you know, that just when someone talks about them in the pub, it suddenly get all excited, and that memory, that shared memory that we've got of those moments, I think it's incredibly powerful, incredibly useful.
It's
like you know, because they're experiences that you can't have outside of the game that you can share with other people. Do you know what I mean? Like that's sort of for me, because I've been sort of similar. I've been skateboarding since I was about 14, right? And the funny thing about skateboarding is you can't really talk about it with people who aren't skateboarders. They just don't understand.
Yeah.
You know, and that's fine. Like, it's not a judgment on any level. It's just that's how it is. It's like there's a certain bloody mindedness and ridiculousness to skateboarding, as well as all of the other stuff, right? But that people who aren't skateboarders just, you know, they can never appreciate it because they've never done it. And I think that's sort of what games give you as well, right? You have shared experiences individually quite a lot of the time, but then you can talk about them afterwards. Like, oh my God, did you do that thing? Yeah, I did that thing. Oh, that for me, that's sort of what it is really in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's very much a community. And you know, that's one of the things that I always found really interesting was when I first got into the games industry, one of the people who first got me into the industry, I remember him saying something to me about the fact that, and take this as an observation, as you will, but that there was a lot of people who worked in the games industry who were at the senior management level, or, you know, they're at the top of the game. And the issue was that they'd never played games, or they didn't play the game that they were selling. Yeah, and I remember at the time just thinking, how insane can this be that you are selling this game, this product, and you haven't actually played it? And I remember when I started at one particular studio, and I literally felt that the need to insist that the entire commercial team, bless them, I marched them down to the development team and made them sit in front of the dev team and play head-to-head with the development team on the game so that they could actually understand the project that they were supposed to be selling.
You know, this is actually something that winds me up a lot as well, and I totally agree with you. I mean, it's one of the things I love about the Unity folks, and I don't mean this as a kind of like pro-Unity thing. It's just that it's one of the things that I think makes that place so special is that they believe in eating your own dog food. You know, so the phrase that we always use for it, you know, this idea that if you're going to make something, you've got to be prepared to use it. You've got to actually understand it and be engaged with it. And I think companies that don't do that really don't live up to, you know, how can you make a better product if you don't understand why it works?
But if you don't love the game yourself, if you aren't an advocate for your game, then why would anybody else believe in your game? That's always been my thing.
But you know, that's one of the saddest and most miserable parts about working in the video game industry, because everyone's done it, I assume, is you working on a game that you really don't like and feeling like powerless and all the decisions that are happening. You're just like, why are we doing this? This is so awful. I mean, I've got one that was an absolute stinker. I'm not even going to talk of its name.
Let's not name names.
But the thing is, I actually haven't, and the reason is most of the time my career has been working on platforms rather than individual games, and often I got to choose what games went on. So if your game was stuck, if I didn't like playing it, it didn't go on.
Well, that's all right for some people, Oscar, but not all of us have that luxury.
No, I know. I'm just saying, I was very lucky.
But I do remember an occasion where when I had not played a game before, and most people who know me are going to know exactly what I'm talking about now when I say this, but I do recall a game where I had not played the game, the core primary product of the studio. I wasn't even going to be working on that particular game. I was going to be working on a different game. But I thought it's worth me understanding how this game works, so I'll go in and I'll have a little play. Having a rather interesting moment. I'm not going to state it for the record because it would be bad. But
God's sake.
Well, no, just suffice to say, I ended up getting mobbed by all these players who clearly knew that I was a mod, or I was, a member of staff, because they made it really bloody obvious that you was a member of staff and they didn't tell me how to turn it off. So I ended up getting mobbed by all these players who was just like, give me this, give me that. I'm just like, I don't know what's going on. I'm a noob. Leave me alone. And then probably having it Facebooked and YouTubed to the rest of the world to let them know that I didn't know what I was doing.
Spot the noob working there, yeah. We had this all the way along. Back in the old days, in like 98, 99, when we had a thing called Wireplay, but the same thing. And even then, you had people, if you were, identifiable as a kind of Wireplay staffer, you'd get inundated, even in that. But
it's like you're a rock star. It really is. It's horrible.
Yeah. But sometimes they get really angry as well because, you're responsible for everything.
Oh, God, yes. You are responsible for everything. Absolutely everything.
I totally get that. And actually, that's part of the sort of things about running a service is being able to do that. But it is really interesting the kind of how personally the players of an experience take it. Because if you think about it, they're dedicating their time and money to enjoying your game. And
often years of their life, frankly.
Yeah, exactly. And it's often a major part of what they the way they experience. And again, I think the reason why I was mentioning it is because if you think about it, we talk flippantly about these kind of things, but actually, games are quite serious for people. They might be escaping, they may be doing all sorts of other things, but the benefits that they're getting, the sense of engagement, is a really special thing, really, dare I say, special effect of what our industry can do for people.
It's interesting, actually, because what you're talking about really is this notion that the game becomes a sanctuary for people. It becomes their private, personal sanctuary. And so when you do something that changes the ground rules of that space and it causes some kind of discomfort, that they're really very verbal and very, very aggressive about it in a way that they would never be if you was in a physical shop face-to-face. They would never behave that way. But when it's their personal space and it's in the digital domain and they can really kind of, pour out all their feelings about it, they get very, impassioned, because it really is. It's their personal sanctuary, and it's like invading somebody's home. You've just invaded their home. How dare you? And so they do get very, very passionate about it. And, I say this love and affection for every player that's ever played any of the games I've ever worked on. I absolutely respect and value every single player, but they can be very intimidating at times.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's not the same as, because I worked on PlayStation Home, and the experience of that was, I'm deeply passionate about the world and all that kind of stuff, but my experience of it is very different from people who are fans of that service. And obviously, it's been closed down since, but even now, I still talk to people who are fans of that experience, and their perception of it is so different from mine as being involved in making it. They're very different worlds, the participation and the creation process. But what's also interesting to me about that is, like I say, the rules of social engagement are really interesting. Like you say, it's like them being in their own home, and the social norms that we would do in the outside world. There's like a psychological effect that happens in any virtual experience, any virtual world, where our kind of barriers shift. We don't necessarily, we think of ourselves as anonymous, but we also at the same time oddly think of this as our personal space. So there's really interesting psychology going on in behind the scenes of that as well.
And it's interesting as well, because I think there's been this kind of shift in modern culture over the years. I mean, I remember maybe a decade or 2 decades ago where it was really not the thing to talk about the fact that you played games. If you sat in a room and was kind of, yes, I'm the guild master and I do this and I do that, people would look at you in a very strange way. And it wasn't really the done thing to talk about, the fact that you were a gamer. And now it's almost like, it's the cool hip thing. If you can say, I've been to an esports game, I watch a bit of esports here and there, and oh yes, I play games, and it's not necessarily quite so socially questionable about the fact that you are a gamer. And it's interesting to see how that's evolved over time as well. There's this acceptance, if you like, in the mainstream that, okay, well, gamers are a thing, they do exist, and we'll give them their space to do what they do. But I'm interested to hear from you, Noel, because you're being so incredibly quiet. I'm not going to let you off.
Thanks, Tanya.
So I want to hear from you, though, in terms of your thoughts on this and your experiences with this. I mean, obviously you deal with kind of, finding those difficult to find people and recruiting people. But I'm interested to hear your most interesting recruitment story, because there must be a few of those. Come on.
There's a hell of a lot of those. Some that I can...
No names. You don't need to name names. But tell us one of your recruitments.
I'm just inclined to acquiesce to your request there. Yeah, no, there's hundreds and hundreds. I mean, the majority of our work comes from referrals or people that have known me over the years, and they'll say, yeah, they're coming to the end of a project or something, maybe in 6 months or a year's time, and I'll start looking around for something that really does help them. But what we're doing, majority of the work we're doing right now is we're trying to change the way that recruitment works and empower the industry as a whole to be able to recruit the right way for the studios. So they kind of doing myself out a job, but we're helping studios to find the people directly.
Okay.
And that all came about from hearing some horror stories. Hopefully I've...
Share a horror story. Come on, Noel.
I can't. There's too many people that I can.
You
don't have to tell us any names. Come on.
Well, there's...
you want to.
I know I do, but I probably should just make sure that I have actually abbreviated it sufficiently that I wouldn't get into trouble. There are some rather obvious ones that no matter how clever I thought I was being, you'd work out, and as would any of our listeners, they are rather a clever bunch. So it's one of the unique things about the video games industry. We all know someone. I think there's probably 3 channels removed from the farthest reaches of the video games industry. So
that's actually an interesting point that we should probably touch on as well, actually, is the fact that for people who don't work in the games industry, it is quite a strange thing to come to like a GDC or Gamescom or whatever, and see the sense of, I'm going to just say, family that exists between the games industry in a way that doesn't necessarily exist in other corporate verticals. It's a very, very much one big family, and as with all families, there are people that really get on very well in those families. Then you have the occasional black sheep, and you have the people that don't get on. But ultimately, everybody knows everybody else. It's such a small community, and that sounds really ironic when you think about how big the games industry actually is. I do kind of tend to agree with, which is that it is literally 3 degrees of separation from everybody in the industry.
I mean, frankly, if you're not 2 degrees from me, you're probably not in the industry.
Ooh.
On LinkedIn, seriously, on LinkedIn.
The man with the hat has spoken.
I mean, I'm joking, but I'm not at the same time, because I've only met one person the last 3 years at a conference who wasn't already 2nd degree.
Mm.
I'm an exception. I go around the world and all these conferences and all that kind of stuff. But it's what's really fascinating. It's not just the fact that it's so close. It's also even closer when you start talking about people who've been involved in mobile games. I mean, mobile games industry is starting to get bigger now, but historically, it's
a very small
tiny group.
Very small.
And if you think about the people who are being the most successful, the Supercells, the Robios, all that kind of stuff, seriously, Next Games, Future Play, all these guys are the same people I used to deal with in 2003 and 2004. There's nothing kind of new under the sun, it seems, in games. We seem to be fanatics who keep digging and trying to do new things.
But you've brought up this interesting point, which was, when I first started out my company, Digital Jam, it was actually a mobile game consultancy. And we very quickly pivoted out of that when I realised just how small the industry was and the fact I'd already worked with everybody.
Yeah, exactly. How funny that is.
So
I keep finding people, like, for example, I started working on a mobile game project with consulting, and it turned out that the guy who's heading up the tech development sold me a game in 2005.
Yes, that's the thing though, that everybody comes around again at some point in time in this industry, either as a publisher or a developer, or either which way, you end up kind of having these relationships with people that just keep on dynamically changing because they keep coming back into your sphere of influence every couple of years. But I am interested to understand from you guys, because one of the other kind of, I don't think it's a misconception, I think it is genuinely true, is that we in the games industry are incredibly close to the film industry. And that can be in a number of different ways, whether that is the fact that we are directly involved in production of film, or whether it is just the fact that we love good sci-fi.
And bad sci-fi.
We love bad sci-fi.
Bad sci-fi as well. Because, let's be honest, I don't think there is anybody who works in the games industry or is a gamer that has not been hugely influenced by a movie as well, whether that's, Lawnmower Man, Virtuosity, Tron, whatever the thing is, there's definitely going to have been a movie somewhere in that mix as well. So I'm going to throw out the same question and challenge as I did with game moments. I want to know from you, movie-wise, what is the movie that really, for you, kind of sparked it and made you feel like, oh gosh, this is definitely the fantasy world I want to see come to life? Was it a Tron? Was it a Lawnmower Man? What was the movie for you, Alex?
That is really, well, as someone who was born in 1975 and lived through the 80s, it's pretty much obviously got to be Star Wars.
Oh, wow. Okay, we have to exclude certain films. I think we have to exclude any Star Wars and Star Trek films. non-major franchise.
Starfighter?
Oh God, yes, of course. Every bloody Christmas. Come on.
That blew my mind. That was because I loved that.
Are they not trying to make a remake of that or something? I saw something about it.
Do you know what? I've been trying to buy it for years, and it just doesn't seem to be available anywhere to buy. Like, or maybe I was just going to stream it. One of the two, I can't remember.
They do seem to play it every year at Christmas, though.
Well, I must try harder to find it. What other films?
I've seen things you people
Krull.
wouldn't
Did you ever
believe.
see Krull?
Krull, of course, yes.
Yeah, with the see, now that blew my mind as well when I was a kid, because like that and the original, like the animated version of Lord of the Rings that never got finished. That I think Ralph Bakshi made it.
Yeah.
That was another one as well, man. Those were I've never really been very orky or goblin-y or elfy, right? But those films really sort of struck a chord. I think with it's not Krull. I think with that, right, one of the things with that is it's like a really archetypal hero's journey, that film, you know. And I think I don't know whether it's a man thing or just a human thing. but the hero's journey, just to me, it just like now that I'm older and I've got kids and like I worry about society and stuff, hero's journey stuff like hits me right in the feels almost straight away, and it's ridiculous because it's like the oldest story pretty much.
Yeah.
And it still always makes me go, oh my god, I just want to save everybody and be amazing, and like films like that. You know, that's why games like Zelda, like for me, that's one of the games that I'll always play, regardless of, you know, how many times it's basically the same thing with newer graphics and slightly different reason to save the person from the whoever. It's, you know, you get to save an entire universe, right? Those games, they're stupid. And I mean, in a lot of ways, it's quite like puerile, but like I love it. I just could literally play games like that all day.
Okay. Oscar, come on. You were desperate to tell us what movies. Come on.
I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. Ships on fire of the shoulder of Orion. I've watched sea beams glitter in the dark near the 10-hour gate. All these moments will be lost in time, like tears in the rain. That's the only thing you need to hear from me. You know, Blade Runner, absolutely the pivotal film. And frankly, I've already said that at my funeral, I want that said.
Wow.
It sums up everything about games and movies and why they're so important. But, you know, you talked about Krull. We used to call it Crud. Then there was Hawk the Slayer. Anyone remember that?
No.
Oh, seriously. Wow. I mean, just...
Maybe I'm too young. What one was that?
So old. I'm so old. I'm older than all of you by miles. Ridiculous. But, you know, frankly, the only one that... Yes, don't get me wrong. Star Wars, of course, but like we said before, that's not.
That's
Blade Runner is about changing minds.
Okay, so Noel, what would have been the movie for you in terms of a sci-fi movie that is just etched in your brain?
Oscar's already said Blade Runner, but
You're going to stick with Blade Runner?
Difficult. No, I can't. So you touch on sort of Mario and the Zeldas and things, and you know, pivotal film for me that hits me every time is Finding Nemo, but that's not really sci-fi. So I've got to go for something more along the lines.
I just can't believe none of you have said like Dark Crystal or something like that.
Dark Crystal as well, though. But I watched it was grown up, and it's just like it's nowhere near. And the Labyrinth, right? Labyrinth is in my like top 3 maybe of all films ever.
But that's just started coming back. My daughter's 7 and she's just watched Labyrinth for the first time, and that's going to be on repeat now in the house. So,
I love that film so much.
But back on the sci-fi side, I'd have to go Matrix. But yeah, the red pill or the blue pill, and opening your mind to alternate realities and saving everyone.
Okay.
I quite like all that.
It's worth
Total
remembering.
Recall as well, man.
It's worth remembering a film which had Tom Cruise and Tim Curry. Tom Cruise's first ever film. Legend.
Absolutely
awesome.
Do you know what though? The thing that I remember the most about Legend was not Tom Cruise or any of the other male actors. It was actually Mia Sara.
Yes.
She was amazing in that movie, and I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, that is what, you know, you want a proper princess in a movie. She is the proper princess in a movie. Also,
the girlfriend for Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yes, she was. That's what she'll always be known for, right? She was Ferris Bueller's girlfriend. Bless her.
She was Ferris Bueller's girlfriend. I mean, how more special could that be?
Absolutely. Oh gosh, we definitely have a trip down memory lane. So, having said all of that, these wonderful trips down memory lane and all of these rather random points that we're discussing, it's just a small sample, a little taster of the possibilities of 24 whole hours of content from the mega panel at Insomnia. And so, Oscar, what I would like for you to do is to share with the listeners, the lovely people who've stuck it out this long, this isn't even 24 hours, it's just barely under an hour, and share with them the social media handle and the various website addresses to find out more information about the lovely mega panel.
So you can find out more information by looking on Twitter with the handle at megapanel_games, or you can go look on Facebook, so facebook.com/megapanelgames, all one word. Either of those, and you should get all the information you like, and hopefully shortly we'll be putting up a schedule of all the conversations that we'll be having for each hour and all the guests.
That'll be on the website later tonight, www.megapanelgames.com.
Awesomeness. And for anybody who is brave enough, and I do say brave enough, to actually join us in person, do we know which stage we will be at Insomnia?
So we're going to be in the bring your own computer area, and we have a tented area that you will not be able to miss right near the bar in that hall. And
will our fellow listeners who join us in person, will they be allowed to bring their sleeping bags and join us for the solid 24 hours if they so desire?
I'm not sure about the sleeping bags, but obviously, come and join us, and we challenge you to stay awake with us.
And we may even drag a few of them onto the stage at some point, depending on how desperate and tired we all are.
I think we're going to be desperately tired and hysterical, so that should be nothing but entertaining.
Wonderful. Well, having framed the possibilities, we do hope that you will join us for Insomnia on the 9th and 10th of December in Birmingham, I believe, at the NEC. And if not, then join us via Twitch. Do we know what the Twitch stream address is, Oscar?
Well, there'll be the Twitch address is... Oh, good question. I have it in front of me and I've just lost it. Noel, do you remember the Twitch stream?
Yeah, www.twitch.tv/megapanelgames, all one word.
Wonderful. And so, in closing, as always with our Digital Jam sessions, we like to give our listeners a way to find out a little bit more about you and follow you, stalk you, whatever it is they want to do, by asking you to share with us your social media handle of choice. So, what would that be, Noel?
You got me again, Tanya. Sorry. You're looking for...
It's just a Twitter handle.
What's your Twitter handle?
MPGs007.
Thank you.
Sorry, Tanya.
That's all good. Alex, what's your Twitter handle?
Mine's at Darbotron.
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 So good. Oscar, share with us.
Still at Athanasius, which is ATHANATEUS.
Wonderful. And once again, we'd like to thank you for joining us on this Digital Jam session and listening to us ramble about the mega panel. If you enjoy this content, don't forget to subscribe and review, and follow us on Twitter at Digital Jam Ltd. DigitalJamSessions.com